It's time for Waking Up with Wesley. Today's forecast and weather-wise discussion with WLOX First Alert Weather's senior meteorologist, Wesley Williams.
Waking Up with Wesley is sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for waking up with Wesley. I'm Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. So finally, without further ado, the cool front has finally gotten here, and we're going to take a look at what kind of changes are in store for our weather pattern as we go through the remainder of the week and go into the upcoming weekend. First of all, we got to take a look at this morning's beautiful sunrise. This was the time lapse in Gulfport showing that transition from dark 30 o'clock to just beautiful. And might I say that this has been the easiest morning in the Weather Center, because yesterday morning I was tracking fog. Morning before that we were tracking fog. Morning before that we were tracking rain. So this is actually the first day of this work week with easy weather in the morning and no impacts to any of your morning plans. So if you're planning to head out this morning, you don't have to fight any fog, you don't have to run away from any rain. It's just kind of a nice, pleasant morning. Now, does it feel pleasant? Well, we'll take a look at the answer to that in just a moment, but we do want to talk about First Alert radar. Notice that there's no rain to see on the radar map, and the Futurecast shows hardly any rain this morning. But the chance might not be zero, believe it or not. Look at what the computer model shows. But even though for most of the day we don't see any rain, I want to point out this area over Alabama and Florida. There might be this little weak disturbance trying to move in from the east, and we'll notice some of those rain showers. Watch them as they kind of pop up there. You can see a few of them near Pensacola, Mobile. We'll see if some of those can get a little bit closer to our Mississippi coast as we go into Thursday evening and Friday morning. Here's a more zoomed in view of Futurecast. Again, plenty of sun this morning, hardly any rain. But then as we go into the afternoon, we'll watch off to the east, maybe a few spotty showers near Mobile, Pensacola, and we'll watch to see if those get a little bit closer to us as we head into parts of Thursday evening, Thursday night, Friday morning. So that's the reason why the rain chance is not zero. And if we don't get any rain out of that, then there's really not much hope, because the air is going to be continually turning drier and drier. So these rain chances, frankly, are fighting a losing battle, because as the air turns drier, the rain chance is it's hard to make rain if the air is not moist enough for it. And so as you can see, the chances today and tonight are only around 20%. And then as we go into tomorrow, they're barely at 10%. We do want to bring you the latest update to the drought monitor. This was just updated within the last hour or so. And we see, if that's the case, if it has been updated within the last hour or so, that there's been no real change to the drought situation here. I know we had some rain this past Sunday and Monday, but it was not enough to alleviate the severe drought that has begun to form across parts of our area, especially impacting areas near Gaucher, Van Cleve, Ocean Springs, St. Martin, Biloxi, D'Iberville, parts of Gulfport. So that severe drought there in the parts of Harrison and Jackson counties. And the stretch of weather over the next 7 days is a predominantly dry pattern. So there's really not going to be much hope for rain. If you don't get those little tiny spotty showers this evening and tonight, there's probably not going to be much more where that came from. But now we'll talk about the changes. And in general, before we go into the detail, just look. You go from 87 today to 83 tomorrow. You go from 66 tonight to 61 tomorrow night. And there's a lot of detail baked into that. So let's dive into the details. So there's the front. It's now offshore of our Mississippi coast, but the drier air behind this front is actually lagging behind. And what I want to do right now is switch over to our water vapor channel in the satellite. So this kind of shows you how much moisture is in the air, especially upstairs in the air. And even though the front is way out in the Gulf, the drier air behind the front is still situated north of Interstate 20 in northern Mississippi. So that's where the air is actually much drier, and it's taking some time to get down to the coast. It will eventually get here, but it's not here yet today. So any changes that we see today are probably going to be pretty minimal. But once all of this stuff eventually gets here overnight into tomorrow, into Friday, that's when we'll notice some significant and noticeable change to how dry the air feels in South Mississippi. And like I said, once that stuff gets here, it's going to be really difficult for any rain to form because there's just not going to be nearly enough moisture. Now, we are not getting hit by the core of the cold with this front. That's going to stay up in the northern tier of the nation. There are frost advisories in Wisconsin, freeze watches in West Virginia, freeze warnings in New York and other parts of New England. So that's where they're seeing and experiencing some of the coolest conditions from this cool front. It's kind of going to be limited up here. And instead of that cooler air diving down to the Gulf Coast, it's instead actually going to be moving toward the east out into the Atlantic. But sometimes with the mountain chain off to our northeast, the Appalachian Mountains, which generally sit in this vicinity here, if you have cooler air coming, going from west to east, sometimes you can get the cool, it's called a process called cold air damming. You can look it up, but basically the cold air dams up against the mountain region and it kind of sneaks down sometimes into the Gulf Coast region. And so that's actually one of the reasons why that little disturbance is trying to swing in from the east as we go into later Thursday evening and Friday. And we'll maybe see, as long as we can keep pulling in some of these winds from the northeast, maybe we can get a little bit more of that cooler air to eventually come down here to the coast, especially by this weekend. Let's take a look at this. So we can actually show you what this looks like with the model information before we get to the current stuff. So here's a look at where all of that cold air is sitting out here in New England. And upstairs in the air, you actually have this kind of big upper high sitting right about there. Big upper low sitting up here. And so you do have this flow where we do have this air coming down. You can already kind of see it doing that kind of cold air damming pattern. And if we can get it to continue to do that and continue to come down toward the Gulf Coast, which appears to be what could likely happen, it will be going around the clockwise circulation around that upper high. What that can do for us, you see all of this orange color on top of our Mississippi coast? Watch what happens as we put this into motion from Thursday, watch the orange stuff here, to Friday. It got shoved away, right? So, okay, it's not enough push of cooler air to get this blue color all the way down, but it is enough push of cooler air to at least shove away the orange stuff. The orange stuff is the warmer air, warmer than usual air for us. And so that shoving continues Friday into Saturday, and you kind of notice this blank across South Mississippi. We have the lack of orange here, which is why and how we can get it to feel a little bit more comfortable eventually with some less warm afternoons and some kind of chilly mornings. This morning, there's no chill. It's in the lower 70s. The temperatures have barely changed from yesterday. They're about the same as yesterday morning at this time. So that's why I say you do have to practice patience. Just be patient. Even though most of us might not notice a dramatic change today, it will become much more noticeable by the time we get to tomorrow and all of that drier air finally hits our coast. And that will allow the weekend to feature some kind of chilly mornings too. Let's get to the day by day. So here's today. What do we have for you on this Thursday? A low rain chance there, 10 to 20%, in case we see some of that activity coming in from Alabama and Florida, mainly later in the day. So for most of the day, you're just looking at many rain-free hours. Should be a beautiful Thursday. We'll get a little breeze at times. That breeze up to 8 to 14 miles per hour coming in from the northeast. And that's trying to pull in that drier air from the northeast as much as possible. But look, it's still warm, right? Upper 80s, there's nothing cool about that. But the difference today, yesterday we had upper 80s, but we had upper 80s with much muggier air. Today we're going for upper 80s with slightly less humidity. So maybe if you're going to be out and about, yeah, it'll still be warm, but maybe it won't feel quite as warm. Now tonight, we're looking at temperatures overnight falling into the middle 60s, which will be cooler than last night's upper 60s. So a little bit cooler as we head into your Thursday night and Friday morning. Understand that the rain chance tonight is not zero in case we see some of those clouds, maybe a little tiny shower from some of that activity from Alabama and Florida. But we'll also notice the air continuing to turn a little less humid. So today, slightly less humid. Tonight, even more with the drop in the humidity. And then by the time we get to tomorrow, that's when I think it will be most noticeably dry. You will feel the dryness in the air for Friday, no matter where you are, whether you're up in Wiggins, whether you're down in Bay St. Louis, no matter where, all of South Mississippi will have a noticeably drier feel by tomorrow. I think today it's kind of iffy. Some spots notice it more than others. I would bet that Lucedale will notice it more today than Waveland. But tomorrow we all share in the dryness. As the air turns drier, it will be really difficult for rain to form tomorrow. So the best we can do might be a 10%, and it might not even go to that. It might be less than 10% for the rain chance tomorrow. But look at the temperatures, lower 80s. That is not as warm as today's upper 80s. And so, I mean, come on, let's get my checklist going here. Tomorrow, lower 80s for highs, check. Lower humidity, noticeably lower humidity, check. And a nice little pleasant breeze from the northeast, check. It's all, the stars are lining up. The stars are aligning. It's just going to be a really nice fall-tastic Friday is what I'm going to call it. So if you have any ideas about plans to get outside and enjoy the air tomorrow, it will turn a bit on the crisp side. In this trend is likely going to continue into the weekend. You can see for Saturday and Sunday, it only gets even less humid. So that's that kind of gradual trend as we go from today, where it's still kind of muggy at times, to tomorrow when it is becoming more pleasant, and you're going to notice that, to Saturday when it's just downright crisp. Sunday will also be downright crisp. We lose a little bit of that next week, but it's still not going to be terrible. So again, just make sure you seize the days for Saturday and Sunday. And speaking of Saturday, Sunday, again, when the air turns drier this time of year, you know what that means. It lets the mornings cool off a little bit more. So just giving you a first alert that it's a little sweater weather for you as you step out the door Saturday morning. These are the numbers on the board. On the map, you've got lower 60s and upper 50s. These types of temperatures, I would imagine they would exist from like 3 in the morning on Saturday to about like 8 or 9 in the morning on Saturday. If you wait till after 9 o'clock in the morning to step out the door on Saturday, you won't even know that it was this chilly. So in order to experience these chilly temperatures, you have to be up and at them early. So be sure to step outside before the sun gets too high in the sky, or you'll never know, you'll never experience this kind of October chill that's hanging out with us. Sunday will be even chillier. Look at these morning temperatures for Sunday. You're looking at middle 50s. Wiggins could have 55 degrees Sunday morning. Again, this is only for a limited period of time, from about 3 in the morning Sunday to about 8 or 9 in the morning Sunday. That's when you experience the coolest part of the day around sunrise. Once the sun gets higher in the sky, those temperatures will warm. So if you wait till after 9 or 10 in the morning on Sunday, it won't be that cool, it won't be that chilly. We are forecasting high temperatures in the lower 80s over the weekend. So it's not like it's going to be like extremely hot. I think that's really kind of pleasantly warm. You know, a high of 83, that's going to be our first one of that tomorrow, and we get 3 days in a row of kind of those lower 80s for highs. It's actually really close to normal for this time of year. So it really, truly will feel like fall for your Friday, and especially for your Saturday and Sunday. So a nice little trend here as we wrap up the Cruising the Coast week. I know we were off to a bit of a wet start, but you know, we got into gear and got things to look on the bright side as we end and round out the week. Well, that'll do it for today's edition of Waking Up with Wesley. I've been Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. Get excited for the changes as the cold front brings us some changing weather into the upcoming weekend.
Waking Up with Wesley has been sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.